Kill Boring Dead intrigued me. It was some subconscious association with Wild that brought me here.
You're incredibly experienced and skilled in the marketing world. I'm curious to begin with, why are you not a dentist? Why did you get into marketing?
I don't think I'm skilled. I think the industry is moving so fast. The reason I'm here actually is because I'm conscious about what I don't know. With the growth in creative, AI, I know I've got more to learn every single day. And so the way I do that is talking to people. And, I need to talk to people, not of my generation, but of yours and maybe even younger people, because ultimately they're the consumers of tomorrow. And they're using the platforms that are most relevant at the moment. Facebook is I'm not on Facebook, I'll happily admit, but it's an old generational platform that's getting old and tired, and people are migrating off it to new and exciting platforms and metaverses and all these other sorts of things.
Yeah, I like that. Having a growth mindset, the second you're well, I understand marketing, you're right. It's probably
the moment you do that, you probably die.
Yeah.
Because you stay still.
Yeah, you've painted yourself into a corner right away. Jon, thanks for joining us today. Really appreciate it. Among a lot of experience, you're currently the CMO of Pet Circle, which is awesome.
That's right.
Your last name's also Wild, which I find nice as well. So yeah, welcome. I'm super excited to talk about marketing and advertising with you today.
Thank you, Marcus. Look, I'm looking forward to it. Maybe that's why I'm here, because when you first approached me, I got approached by a lot of people, but the Kill Boring Dead intrigued me. Maybe it was some subconscious association with Wild that brought me here.
Well, that brand name, when I thought of it in the bath, was a certain moment. I'm like, okay, cool. I think that's my new agency name.
Yeah, I love it.
Anyway, so you're incredibly experienced and skilled in the marketing world. I'm curious to begin with, why are you not a dentist? Why did you get into marketing?
I'll actually, first of all, hit on the skilled piece, because I don't think I'm skilled.
Okay.
I think the industry is moving so fast. The reason I'm here actually is because I'm conscious about what I don't know.
Okay, cool.
And, with the growth in creative, AI, the social networks and all this, and, all the things that you're native in, I'm not a native TikToker by any stretch of the imagination. So I know I've got more to learn every single day. And so the way I do that is talking to people. And, I need to talk to people, not of my generation, but of yours and maybe even younger people, because ultimately they're the consumers of tomorrow, and they're using the platforms that are most relevant at the moment. Facebook is I'm not on Facebook, I'll happily admit, but it's an old generational platform that's getting old and tired, and people are migrating off it to new and exciting, platforms and metaverses and all these other sorts of things.
Yeah, I like that. Having a growth mindset, the second you're well, I understand marketing, you're right. It's probably
the moment you do that, you probably die.
Yeah.
Because you stay still.
Yeah, you've painted yourself into a corner right away. Okay, awesome. Well, I would love to maybe just start off with an interesting kind of fun question. But in your experience, what in the marketing world is complete BS? What are you kind of sick of hearing?
A lot. We may dive into this later, but I think the whole performance brand piece really, I think, is one that gets a lot of column inches, a lot of reactions. The Ritsons and the Sharps of this world have made a career off basically stoking that debate. But I was taught this actually before the digital era. But it was actually around retail advertising and brand advertising. And at that time, there was still this, retail is different to brand.
Okay.
And someone, I don't even know who it was, I think it was a creative director in one of the agencies we were working with, said, there is no such thing as retail advertising or brand advertising. It's simply brand advertising trying to get you to buy something, or retail advertising trying to get you to like your brand. The point being is all advertising contributes to your positioning in a consumer's mind, whether it's a search ad or whether it's a big fancy Super Bowl ad. And I think that, every time you touch a consumer, that is an advertising, that is a marketing or an advertising touch point. And it might even not be media, or it might even be the way people typically pigeonhole marketing, which is, TV ads or social media ads, whatever. It could be, what you print on the box. Who Gives a Crap done a great job of building a brand on a cause and then really smart packaging. When I lived in the UK, there was a brand I loved called Innocent Smoothies, which kind of nudie smoothies over here, but the copywriting on the back of that pack, I still remember a line which was something in the lines of, because we use fresh ingredients, the milk and may get separated, but don't worry, mum and dad still love you. Like, what a beautiful piece of copywriting. Someone took the time and attention to do that.
Yeah.
And so, like, all of this, it's a performance ad, it's a brand ad. That's all just BS. And it just I mean, look, creates column inches, it creates debate. You know, again, I use this Oscar Wilde quote all the time, better be talked about than not at all. So it creates conversation, which I think is a good thing, albeit I think the actual subject is a little hackneyed.
Yeah, interesting. I guess marketing is just everything you don't have to do. Speaking of those little funny lines of copy that just stick with you, on the Strange Love website, they sell a T-shirt, and on the description it says $1 from every sale of this T-shirt will go into our bank account along with the other $59.
Beautiful. Virgin do some good stuff on their T's and C's as well, which is like, here's a long set of T's and C's, the lawyers made me do it.
Yeah.
You know, and I just think that little bit of those little things can really elevate a brand. And it's not performance, it's not retail, or it's not brand, it's just care and attention, I think.
Yeah, well, I heard you say brand is just a promise.
Yeah.
So if your promise is cheap or great value, then technically a performance ad could be a brand piece.
Correct. Yeah, that's an Ogilvy quote, I think, which is a brand is a promise delivered, which says a couple of things.
Well, you said it to me, so in my world, you said it.
Right, everything's derivative.
Yeah.
But, you know, the point being is that when you say something, you've got to deliver on it. So that's a promise delivered. So if you, in your example, if your promise to a customer is low prices, then you need to deliver that in everything you do, not just your advertising. I think actually another thing that I feel has been really interesting is marketing over the years started with this idea of 4 Ps, you know, so like quite expansive, you know, pricing, promotions, placement, so on, product. And I think it's done itself a serious injustice of contracting itself to being the ads, 1P.
1P, yeah.
And like the shift I'm seeing, and like even as my job as a CMO, is you need to be, for example, as aware of the numbers as the CFO, if not better. In fact, you need to know your stuff even better. And I think I am beginning to see that contraction change and the momentum going back to having, you know, CMOs owning a lot broader remit and owning all of the P. I mean, I've seen up to 7 Ps, but
I'm sticking with 4.
Yeah,
there's 4 Ps.
Stick with the old school. I like that. But like all of those things are part of your promise to a customer, and they all have to be in sync. You can't have like, you know, a low price promise and then have like, you know, fancy luxury packaging. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it feels right.
So yes, I agree with you that if you are, as long as everything is consistent, then you're delivering the promise and every ad is driving towards some kind of brand impression.
Like Starbucks has the best placement. Like it's just amazing global distribution, great pricing strategy. I don't think there's ever been a good ad made for Starbucks because for me, the brand is basically just the other 3 Ps. And I think their vision is like invigorating the human spirit or something like that.
Their insight was the 3rd place, right? So they built the 3rd place. And in fact, they've had a real tough time the last few years, and I think they lost sight of that 3rd place. I read a podcast actually with Howard Schultz, and he said that the app really hurt them because what it did is people started ordering in advance, coming and picking it up and going.
Yeah, great.
And so it lost the whole thing of Starbucks is where you met. It was your 3rd place. And the app and some other things they've done begun to undermine the core essence of the brand. And it's not. And again, I agree. It's not about how you communicate. I mean, I agree. I've barely seen any Starbucks ads, but you see they pick great locations. So that's as good as an outdoor ad.
Yeah.
And then they encourage you to go in there and immerse yourself into this brand experience.
And when they have an amazing venue at Singapore Airport, I'm like, great, that's it. That is the marketing. That is the branding.
That's where you go. It's where you maybe, I don't know if you have meetings or if you recuperate halfway between a flight, whatever. That is your brand experience.
Yeah,
you don't need any fancy billboards or TV ads or radio ads. That is it.
There's also the inverse of having an app or technology. There's an amazing Japanese restaurant in Melbourne. You have to call them at a certain time to make a booking.
Yeah.
And I think that's quite charming and incredibly inconvenient.
Yeah, but there's something about scarcity, right, that builds demand. So I mean, that's probably an example of that where it creates that brand sort of exclusivity in terms of the brand.
I want to talk about O2,
Yep.
which is a branding project you're involved in.
Yep.
And yeah, especially the results that happened immediately after the rebrand.
Yeah, so let me give you some context. I was working for actually a company called Genie, which was their online mobile portal, but part of BT, British Telecom. So think Telstra for the Australian audience.
So it was BT's Cellnet, right?
Yeah, so and then British Telecom had fixed line division and it had a mobile division, which is Cellnet, which was the division I was part of. The fixed line was slow growth, and so they decided to demerge the mobile business, and it was made up of 5 different brands across Europe. So BAG, Telfor, and Digifone, and BT Cellnet. And we were given the task of rebranding it, coming up with a singular brand, and resetting its positioning. And at the time, we decided that this was still Nokia phones were a thing. iPhone hadn't been launched, so it was like 1999, I think.
Cool.
And mobile data was like playing games on like little text-based games and sending text, but it was essentially mobile data. But we kind of knew, I mean, everyone had been talking about this mobile dawn that was coming.
Okay.
We had like a decade of mobile dawn coming. Eventually came with the advent of the iPhone. But and so we decided to position ourselves on being leading with data and the possibilities that created. So essentially we decided to position on possibilities, and then with the enabler being mobile data. We had luxury here. Like every other time I've ever had has been way more contracted than this, but we had 18 months before we launched, but we had a hard date.
Yeah, nice.
And in fact, we had we had a hard date to launch. We went through rounds and rounds of research across Germany, the Netherlands, Ireland, and the UK, looking at all their consumers, and we ended up with two names actually that we were really keen on: O2, which obviously was the winner, and Bob. And like honestly, at one point, Bob was the favourite, and we justified it because Bob's all around you, he's friendly. Someone you know, and we were trying to get away from this cold kind of engineering-y sort of mobile-centric.
And like Cellnet, it's so descriptive.
Yeah,
and
it's like Skynet.
Yeah,
it's like Terminator vibes.
It's like you just want to hate Cellnet. Yeah, I was on the hold to Cellnet.
And customers did, let me tell you. So anyway, it sounds ridiculous now that we would even consider a name called Bob, but we did. And you can make really cool logos because it's a palindrome, so spelled backward and all that sort of thing. So
Bob had legs.
It was quite cool. It had legs. It wasn't, and certainly the manifesto we wrote for it was like you'd buy it. Like the manifesto sounded amazing on Bob.
Nothing better than selling a name into a client.
And we did both. We went through the process of writing like mini brand books, manifestos, and so on. So again, we had a lot of time to get this really right. Anyway, long story short, 021 obviously, and we went through. I think it was about a 6-month exercise of the rebrand. So, everything from digital websites to all of the collateral, everything. I had the Dutch and German markets, and which we were particularly interested in terms of convincing them why we should move to O2. And we launched with this great strapline of "See what you can do." So this was based off the positioning of possibilities. Germans changed it to O2 can do, which wasn't really the positioning because it means that the idea was see what you can do is we're empowering the customer.
It's a possibility there.
Yeah, with O2 can do, sort of saying what O2 can do for you.
Right.
Anyway,
yeah.
We lost that.
Bloody
Again,
Germans.
you got to win the war, not the battle. So we're okay with that outcome. And no point dying on a hill for that.
Yeah.
Because you wanted to win that. You wanted them to own it as well and be part of the story and the narrative. Anyway, we launched it. You've all seen it on the Arsenal Guernsey or the rugby union sides, jumpers. It looks beautiful. Like it's a beautiful, all our merch sold out, really
for
quickly.
a telco is unbelievable.
Yeah. And actually now, postscript to that, it was bought by Telefonica, which is a Spanish telco, and they've now rebranded all of Europe with O2. But the thing, probably the interesting thing about the story is, so we changed all the collateral, everything. We've rebranded. We rebranded on O2. So on the 2nd of a great day.
Very cool.
So we had this
touch point.
Yeah, we had this forced date we had to go live on. We launched, and then 3 months later, we got our first started getting the data back. And the thing that was interesting was, the particular interesting point was all of our customer sat data was going off the charts, way better. But when you looked at things like call time waiting, resolution, all the stuff that typically drives that metric, no change. The consumers were simply reacting to this different brand and positioning and resonating with them. So what it made me realize was this idea that you've got, people are humans and you've got this heart and head. And as marketers, we often overthink things. We often over-rationalize things. And what you realize is that that's not how consumers engage. Generally, they engage with the heart. And so that despite the metrics, the rational things not changing, they were really engaging with this new brand. And really, as I said, really for me, my awakening moment of the importance of brand, which is interesting given that my next juncture was actually going and figuring out Google and like the math kind of side of marketing. But that will stay for me. It's an irrefutable truth in my mind. So again, this whole brand performance thing is brand is really important. Performance will never subjugate it. They just need, but it will help it. It will help it and help support it. But the brand is this promise to a customer that you need to keep.
It's such an interesting story where that tweak actually increases brand sentiment.
Yeah.
Very
well,
interesting.
it wasn't brand sentiment. It was that like rational metrics. Like they felt they weren't on the phone for as long. They were.
I guess being on the phone to O2 is a lot more palatable than selling it.
It is, and we put some funky music in, and we O2ified the experience a little bit,
Okay,
as much as we
interesting.
could. But it's largely the same. But people were just, the starting point was different. It's like I'm engaging with, as you said, like cool, funky O2 brand versus this old, techie, cold sort of Telnet brand.
I love it. I want to shift gears for a sec and talk about how freezers can be more powerful than a TVC.
Yeah, so it actually predates the O2 days, and again, this comes back to the 4 Ps of marketing. So again, a big, I guess, life lesson for me here. I was working at Unilever, which does a lot of soap powders, and a lot of other bits and pieces. In the supermarket, half the stuff is from Unilever.
Yeah.
But they also do ice cream, and that's the division I was working for. And we had this idea we wanted to expand into New Zealand, and they had a really strong incumbent called Tip Top. We were told 2 things: New Zealanders will never eat an ice cream that's not made in New Zealand, and 2 is they would never pay $2 a time, which was expensive. I think that Tip Top didn't have a Magnum, but they had a Cornetto equivalent, which was at $1.50 at the time. So we were told unequivocally by more than one people, by some of our research as well, New Zealanders would not engage with milk that's not from New Zealand, ice cream that's not from New Zealand, and something at $2. That said, we went ahead anyway.
Just ignore the data.
We ignored the data. So that's another interesting lesson. I always think, get as much data as you can, triangulate it, because often never listen to a single source, because it's generally wrong. Like all single sources of data have errors in them.
Yeah.
But never try and always get yourself a couple of points. I love it when you approach a problem 3 or 4 different ways, and you land in the same area. That to me is like, okay, I've now got a lot more confidence. So anyway, we had enough confidence. We thought we'd succeed.
And this is a gut feel?
Yeah, it was a little bit, and honestly, a real desire to go do it. So probably like in hindsight, it could have gone really badly.
Yeah.
But the key thing the insight that we had was, they call them dairies over in New Zealand. None of them had great freezer solutions. So so over here, you're all used to seeing those fancy Peters or
branded
or street freezers. They're nicely presented and so on. And most of the ones in New Zealand were like, oh, the ice built up, with the bait in one side and the ice cream in the other and so on. So our whole strategy was, let's go in and drop a freezer in every single dairy in New Zealand, or like top 3,500 of them actually it was. But we started at a place in Katai, which is the far north, and worked our way right down to Invercargill, which is right at the bottom. And we'd go in. We had SWAT teams in each little area. They'd go in, walk up to a dairy at cold, so they're not pre-sold, and say, right, do you want a freezer for free? And honestly, the overwhelming response was, oh my God, yes. And we would pick the best spot in the store, plug it in, and then the second truck was the one full of ice creams, and it would follow and would fill it up.
Nice.
And I roughly think I recall that these freezers would cost about $3,000 back in the day. I don't know what they are now, and it would cost us about, depending on the size of the freezer, somewhere between $500 and $1,000 to fill it up. So you got pretty good payback on that initial investment. But we sold out of our first 6 months of supply within a month. and actually had real problems with supply continuity for the next year.
Wow.
Because we just blew away all of our targets. And again, it's like here's a real example where we pulled the placement lever in this case. It was really it was a fun operation, but it was well run, well organized. But it just says that you can, back to my earlier point, marketers shouldn't constrain themselves or limit themselves to thinking that our job is about comms.
Yeah.
Way more than that. This was a marketing-led exercise that we ran, and this was about distribution, about placement. We disrupted the market. I think we were number one at one point over there. But and the other thing that we didn't pick up in the research, but we got played back afterwards, that New Zealanders love traveling like Aussies, and they'd all eaten a Magnum overseas. So they actually had this really positive.
When I was in Venice,
yes, in Italy.
Yeah.
Actually, that was one raised quite a bit. And so, despite the really parochial nature of New Zealanders and milk and the provenance and so on, they'd all had this wonderful overseas experience and probably had a Magnum. And so that particular honestly, we got that up. That was a post launch insight, not one that we went in with. But again, so it really showed me the importance of a placement. Planning was another thing there. We planned this thing really rigorously. And also, use the data, but sometimes go on instinct.
Yeah, just ignoring it all. And also that from a marketing solution doesn't really make sense. The marketing or the advertising is like, let's have billboards and ads and make people drive 6 kilometers to source out this Magnum, which is just not going to happen.
No. I mean, it's called an impulse category for a reason, right? So, but again, I would urge marketers to think about this. So we spent $900,000, I think, if I did my math right, 3,000 freezers at $3,000, whatever it is, or even if 9 million, whatever the number is. But you could have burnt that on TV or burnt that on traditional media, and you would not have got anywhere near the result. So I think it's, again, when you're thinking about your investments, open up the scope. It's not just about buying media. There are other ways you can invest your money to get the same level of return.
So why don't you go back onto the massive performance side with your experience with Groupon, especially with this concept that performance can also grow brand, which is something that a lot of people definitely disagree with. So really curious about how that kind of brand is a promise delivered through Groupon, especially with the performance side of things, can actually grow the brand.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, again, I'll just give a bit of context.
Yeah, please.
So I joined Groupon as the APAC CMO at a point where we're growing like crazy, and a lot of it some of it through acquisition, some of it just through this kind of crazy group buying experiment, like massive experiment that is, if I look back on it now, is essentially using two things. One is this idea of, like those shop dockets, like coupons in the supermarket, old school, like people cutting stuff out.
But on the internet.
But on the internet and in a social kind of way, in a social commerce kind of way. So it was like a sort of two old ideas fused together. Anyways, we're going like crazy, and then I moved to the US to run the US marketing. But the point that I'd arrived there, that had their first year of negative to flat customer growth.
Okay.
And when I got there, they were spending $300 million a year on marketing, roughly split up on search, $100 million on Meta, but largely kind of like bottom of the funnel stuff.
So like all $300 million on performance.
Yeah, essentially, and 100 on coupons.
Wow.
Yeah. They had really sophisticated tracking.
I bet.
Multi-touch, incremental factors and dampeners, multipliers and dampeners, and like all the fancy stuff. Like really, like they had data scientists running this thing.
Yeah, I bet.
Constantly. And the investments all made perfect sense under this lens. Yet we were going, why isn't it translating into, more customers? So the post-realization is that in order to make digital channels really effective, the most efficient way is to actually target existing customers.
Yes.
And so what happens is if you're setting channel owners running independently and measuring them on efficiency, they all start chasing the same customers. And so, my visual was almost like water going down a drain, and you're circling the bottom of the funnel here, and you're circling the same set of customers. So what happens if you keep doing that long enough, you're not adding new customers to the top.
Yeah.
and you see attrition. You see your net attrition or net loss. Now the problem was, and the thing that we spent like a while figuring out was all of our numbers, all our metrics said the opposite, said how efficient this was, and keep investing. So, anyways, we were a very data centric company. So our hypothesis was you can't harvest demand forever. You've got to generate it.
Yeah.
But then the approach, how do you get to a case that satisfied, certainly the financial team on investing in, upper funnel or brand or generative, like advertising that generates demand in a way that, made all the financial metrics make sense.
Yeah.
So at the time we cast about for creative and media agencies, found a really cool independent sort of small creative shop in Chicago. And then we found this media agency based in LA actually, and their whole principle was buying is dead. Like everyone's buying the same stuff roughly at the same price, which is true. And in the US, you had a slightly more sophisticated market where you could, like a DR market where you could buy TV fairly transparently. And actually, all of the value that a media agency could offer was in strategy, but most importantly, measurement, so that then you measure what you do, you optimize, and then improve. And they were using a platform called Blackwood 7. It was one of the first MMMs that was a platform. And by that, and I won't go into the too deeply into a platform, but it basically gave you results on a weekly basis, whereas lots of prior solutions, which were sort of econometric modeling, you get a 3-month look back, you mark your homework, but it didn't help you improve your future buy. And so anyway, we engaged with this team, spent about 3 months getting our data right. You're ever doing an M&M, you need about 2-3 years worth of data. Ideally, you put everything you have, like as much as you have, you can put in there. Let the model determine like what's important, what's not. We went through this process and we built a second set of attribution that ran inside our click-based one. And this one told us that things like search was only 2/3 as incremental as our click-based methodology.
Interesting.
And we ran it for about 6 months. And we used to have this thing called a Tuesday meeting called a weekly trading meeting where you go deep into the numbers. It was a pretty harrowing meeting actually. It was like if your numbers are off, you got a drilling.
Yeah, you don't want to be sleep deprived for that one.
No, that one was like everyone was sharp for that one.
Okay.
And it was, quite a senior meeting. And it was, but what we started doing is we do the meeting on the click-based metrics, and then we'd run our shadow MMM metric. And then after about 4 or 5 months of doing that, the CFO pulled me aside and said, what would you do, based on the MMM, what would you do differently? So the conversation, eventually we agreed to start investing in more traditional media, more reach. I know that's a bit hackneyed now, but like we just need to talk to new customers. We started doing it. We started seeing results, and it really snowballed and culminated into running a Super Bowl commercial.
Which is the biggest 180 of all time for a company like Groupon.
So we've gone from now, and so and like I learned tons from that process.
Yeah, I bet.
I'm not sure I'd do it again.
Oh, really?
Well, if I did it again, I'd do it differently. So actually, I loved it.
And where were you when you saw your own ad watching the Super Bowl?
I was at the Super Bowl.
Oh, really?
We got to go, yeah.
Okay, that's badass.
We actually got to go with Tiffany Haddish. So.
Oh, wow. Who, of course, started it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we took her and her entourage. In fact, short story, she's friends with Kevin Hart.
Okay, brilliant.
And he is a Pittsburgh supporter, and Pittsburgh won.
Okay, that's a great day.
So he was with her. I didn't get into his box, but she went to his box. And they were drinking tequila straight, and he ran onto the ground and started yelling at the microphone and so on. Anyway, so I saw it there. It was amazing. But
very cool.
But actually, our thing on the Super Bowl was not the eyeballs in the match. Was trying to run a really long social media campaign. So we ran a bunch of stuff going into it. Lots of off cuts. Can you guess our ad? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah, nice.
And then really heavy afterwards.
Yeah, great. We actually just a flash in the pan.
Yeah, we won the YouTube kind of their equivalent of their Oscars that year. And so we achieved all that. We achieved all our goals, and we think we got payback. So we when we look at media, we generally look at the incremental revenue or customers or whatever it drives. So the incremental growth versus the cost, and then we measure that back to how long it would pay back. We talk about these things called paybacks.
Yep.
And we typically try and work on 2-year paybacks. And so our payback, we think, on the Super Bowl was under 18 months.
Wow.
Pretty good investment, given that we acquired all these customers, customer lasts for a few years and so on. So the metric, so I think I would do it again. The only thing I regret, we had Tiffany, but we probably should have gone harder in terms of the investment in creative. I would have probably
make the idea bolder.
Gone all out, yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
We tried to do it a little bit. We pat ourselves on the backs about how efficient we were and all that, but I think I probably would have been more extravagant. Like if you're going to shoot for the Super Bowl, you have to go all in. I don't think you're going to hold your shit. You sort of chips back a little bit, but.
Very cool story and interesting internal structure to get to that point.
Yeah. Like, and it's, one of my to budding or everyone out there is like measure everything and get conversant with it, because it will give you a lot of leverage and a lot of standing within your senior leadership team or C-suite, whatever. If you can talk the language of the the CFO and the financial metrics, it enables you to get a lot of stuff done.
And I've heard that you sometimes bring CFOs into pitches and creative ideas.
Yeah, like you want to, because then they feel like they own it, right? So then because the CFO often feels their role is to sort of punch
ticking
holes
boxes,
into things and challenge things and be austere and all that sort of thing. So I always feel like it's quite a good way to bring them along, like get them involved in the creative process. They generally like it, and it if they've been in the creative process, then you make something. It's very hard for them to then question it. You know what I mean? So
I'll keep that in mind with a few CFOs.
You'd be surprised that I've not had a bad. Generally, people, my team particularly, don't love me when I do this, but I can't say I've had a bad experience doing it. And for the most part, it just creates more proximity, makes you more bonded to that team, and they're the ones that play around the balance sheet. Marketing's a big part of it. Marketing is, depending on the business you're in, is like 5 to say 25% of the balance sheet.
Yeah.
P&L. So you're a big part, you're a big cost line. So what you got to try and convince the
it's an investment.
CFO, it's a profit line. Yeah, it's an investment in the future.
Yeah.
And the more you embed them into how things work and so on, the more likely you're going to get a supporter rather than a detractor.
I want to talk about Pet Circle, one of the top 5 retail brands in Australia. And I'm interested to hear especially about how that conversation goes internally around performance and brand, and what kind of conversations you have there.
I mean, we have no. So everyone knows. So we've grown through harvesting demand, unashamedly.
Yeah, nice.
And in fact, the early days we're straight out of the playbook of any D2C, which is win on price and harvest demand.
Yeah, Google, social.
Yeah. So by harvesting, I mean there's already intent. I want to buy a bag of raw can of dog food, whatever. And we just make sure we're dominantly positioned and scoop that up.
Nice.
But at some point there are 2 things that happen. One is that pond gets more competitive, more expensive, less profitable for you.
Yeah.
And actually, you start running out of new customers.
Yeah.
Because there's only and we at some point we know we've got a job is that we've actually got to bring more people online. You've got to do a category job.
Yeah, interesting.
So you've got to generate demand, and you can't do that in search. You can't do that in places where people are actually already putting their intent in.
Yes.
And so we use this number all the time. We're about 13% penetrated in online pet. Travel in Australia is more like 30, 40. In the US, it's 30.
Wow.
So we know we've got a job to be done on educating consumers that buying stuff online is better. Which
kind of now gives a new context to your Get the F Out campaign, which is moving the category forward.
Correct. That was that was the sort of double entendre.
Okay, connecting the dots now.
Yeah. But so it's not a problem for us. The problems generally arrive in measurement and how to what's my payback? Because we still have deeply ingrained in our business this idea of wanting to measure, wanting to understand things, and I applaud that. By the way, I think you need to be able to measure. I think actually one of the great tragedies of marketing was it failed to measure brand correctly, or even try and invest time in figuring it out. And as a result, digital metrics completely ran that over.
And when you can measure that, the CFO ticks it off faster.
Correct. And they love they love a probabilistic outcome rather
Yes.
than a deterministic one, which is really where brand is. You can't. It's not a straight line.
Exactly.
So no problems on the concept. Actually proving it out in practice is a little more complex. But we're running an M&M at the moment. Lots of experimentation, so that if you don't have an MMM, like just run things state by state. Start flexing a channel or into a market, and then watching things like your direct traffic or your brand traffic move. So there are many ways you can cut this, but you do it in a way that's controlled and measured. So in fact, we used a variety of those techniques where we'll pulse a channel into a market, but test it against our control. If it works, then we'll push it into our national kind of campaigns. So I think for Pet Circle, we've got two jobs to be done. We want our customers spending more, and we want more people online. And in order to do that, we're probably the ones. We're probably going to have to own that job.
I'll have to do everything myself.
Yeah. Well, Pet Barn's not going to do it. Who are our biggest competitor? Because they want that. Although they've got a decent online business, it's not in their interest to drive all the market online.
Okay, awesome. And I'm also curious to hear about the Pet Circle brand strategy. Is that something that is a 200-page document? It's an iPhone notes app. Like, how short or long is that?
We've got a more formalized brand document. I like to think about it in we had a platform called Pet Better, and I do think our mission is to basically help customers pet just that little bit better. Whether it's not having to go to a store, so you got an extra hour in the park with your pet.
Yeah.
Or whether it's finding that perfect item.
Through education and upselling.
And we think the cornerstone of our future actually is this integration of data. So, we think that if I know your breed, age, and weight of your pet, I can infer a lot of things and give you really amazing recommendations, advice, content, all these sort of things. So our future, or the world we're building, it's not future, it's happening now, is we're really intent on getting that breed, age, weight. We now have, this thing called a pet selector. So you can, depending on if you've got multiple pets, you pick one, and the website will change accordingly based on what you've selected.
Is that I don't care about cats at all. If I don't own a cat, I just want to see things for cavoodles.
You're only going to, that's where it'll eventually go. We'll eventually go to a breed level. So at the moment it will be dog species level, but we'll go to breed.
And with generative AI, can I see a tan cavoodle in every single one of the product shots?
I think that's the future. I think that eventually I'll have no problems getting your pet image. People love sending that stuff.
I'll give you 3,000 right now.
Yeah, exactly. And then actually, as you say, through AI, I see a world where all of that stuff gets propagated. So your experience is fully immersed into, ideally, what's your pet's name? You don't have one? Or is future pet?
Otis.
Otis, okay. Where Otis is basically featured right through the website and experience. And
Adorable.
I don't think we're lucky. I don't think that's creepy in a pet world. I think it could get creepy.
It's so creepy. It's so creepy with humans. Yes. But your adorable dog that's already plastered over the internet, and everyone knows that their dog is actually the cutest dog ever.
Yeah.
So very interesting. So where else do you see this whole AI content creation?
Question.
Yeah.
I mean, this again, like I talked a bit earlier about, learning mindset and that. Like,
it's very humbling, I would say, this experience.
I read an article or listened to a podcast that said productivity gains from AI will outstretch mobile and internet combined, and I feel like the impact on marketing will be similar. So, like, where this goes, I don't know, but I can see a world where essentially you've got a decisioning engine determining your creative, your offers, your time of day, everything. And so as a marketer, what you'll do is you're loading up segments and kind of goals, and then you have a machine in the middle that's basically determining, when, how, what.
I feel that can be very true for the performance side of things, but I wonder about that brand and the emotional connection and what happens there, if that is also going to be automated.
Question. Good challenge.
Yeah.
I'm still probably going to say yes, I think it can.
Okay.
But it certainly plays better into performance and like CRM and these sort of things. But, I could see a world where it knows you that you like, I don't know, coffee in the morning on a Saturday and
Wait a
finds way.
second.
Yeah,
How did you know that?
Lucky yes, I guess, but and it finds ways to reach you in that context. Now, and some of this stuff I think is right now, and I think some of that future-looking stuff is going to be a while. But there's nothing to say that. I mean, we give up so much data. Like, you're giving Google
For convenience.
You're giving Google probably everywhere, like all your movement data, all that sort of stuff. So I could see at some point people monetizing that and finding ways to reach you in more traditional means.
And I'm also just curious, does Pet Circle have an enemy? Like, do you have a concept or a brand or something that you're like going after?
Good question. I like enemies because I think it sharpens your creative. Probably, it'd be one of two. So supermarkets is one.
Yes.
And the reasoning there is people shop at supermarket. We think through apathy, like there's just slash convenience. So you're going into a supermarket, I may as well go down L9 and pick my pet stuff up as well.
Yeah, I'll get it over and done with.
Now, albeit that it's typically of a low nutritional quality and all that sort of stuff, but it's just but we've got to find a way for those, like if that's our enemy, how do I cut through that apathy or that convenience? Well, it's called convenience apathy. Let's mix the two. The other one is Pet Barn, who the incumbent, and so they're out there. What we found, they copy a lot of what we do, or they replicate a lot of what we do.
Sneaky.
We try and innovate. Yeah, but that's a straight out of the incumbent kind of playbook, right? Is look at your challenger and you don't need to be like a Microsoft. It's kind of a Microsoft strategy. Is like you don't have to be out in front of them. But the moment they move, follow. And stores can be a curse and a blessing. They can do 2-hour delivery. We will not be able to do 2-hour delivery unless we open up like a series of like small dark stores.
Yes.
Or ghost stores, whatever. But so they're our enemy. I think they're a good enemy. Like they're a formidable competitor.
Yeah, great. Keeps you on your toes.
Yeah, exactly.
And just finally, I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on that challenger brand mindset, which sometimes leads to like more creativity, more innovation, and you have to cut through. But also, you're the market leader when it comes to online sales.
Yep.
So where do you see yourself there? And
I think I like a challenger mindset. I agree with you. I think like even as an incumbent, if you can find a way to make sure that's your mindset, I think it gives you an advantage.
Yeah.
I think I always Virgin's probably my sort of archetypal challenger mindset where they go into a category, use the Virgin brand to disrupt the incumbents.
Yeah.
But I think, said another way, I have this innate belief that there is a better way of doing something. The moment you do something, there's probably a better way of doing it. That's why we quite like Pet Better, because it's kind of infinite. Like you can always do better. There's no stop.
Any type of parenting.
Yeah. Like there's no best is the end point, but better means you've got to keep going.
Yes.
And so I think I've talked about this a couple of times actually. It's if you have a mindset that there's the moment you launch something, do something, whatever, that there's a better way of doing it, that keeps you moving, keeps you progressing.
So I'm sensing no set and forget at Pet Circle.
No, if anything, my team tries to hold me back on doing that because I otherwise the risk is you start following, like a cat with a laser beam, you start following a shiny object. So
yes, I've been there.
You got to stability and momentum are a thing. You don't want to disrupt things too much, but you also don't want to rest on your laurels and stay still. Otherwise, the market doesn't.
Exciting. Well, thanks for your time today, Jon. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to chatting again in a few years when we're both AI avatars with personalized dogs or whatever it is. So yeah, excited for the future.
Thank you, Marcus, for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.